Hello, my name is Bree, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel, Breezy Banter, the place where I talk about the things I want to talk about. In today's video, I'm taking a look at my Q4 2024 finances, and also providing an overview of my overall spending and saving and investing during the entire 2024 year. Some quick background information about me. I'm 32. I rent an apartment myself in downtown in a major city in Canada. I make $150,000 a year with a bonus. So that salary does not include the bonus. Last year I made like a 21% bonus. This year I believe I'm eligible for a 30% bonus, which I recognize is quite substantial. I don't necessarily anticipate getting the full 30%, but I will very likely make more than $150,000 this year. I'm currently taking a master's program in which I pay for it and I get reimbursed by my company, and we'll see that reflected in detail when I go through my finances. I'm also preparing for a wedding with my partner. We are long distance right now, and so that's just something to keep in mind as well. Again, there are some wedding expenses that we'll talk about when going through the finances. So with that in mind, I have my handy dandy spreadsheet that I use to keep track of my expenses just right here in front of me. I know there are different trackers that people have and use, and that's fine, that's great for them. I have been doing this way since 2015. I think although I do enjoy having like a visual representation of my data, I also find like the way that I'm doing it is simple, straightforward. It works for me. I don't know if I necessarily want to change it at this point in time, but that is something that I might consider moving forward. So my rent for October, November, December was the same each month. It's $1,085.81. I think I've mentioned before, I live in a rent-controlled unit, which again, I recognize I'm very fortunate for. I've lived in this unit since 2015. Long story short, because I've been in this residence since 2015, I am rent-controlled. If I moved out, I would no longer have a rent-controlled unit. My hydro has fluctuated a little bit. It was $42.32 in October, $58.54 in November, and $56.33 in December. Not really sure of the reason for that, because when I say hydro, it's my power bill. It's not which is very specific, because I mentioned this to my sister about a hydro bill and she thought I meant water. But I think it means different things in different areas. So hydro is my power bill, but it's not my gas bill. I don't pay for gas in my unit. And my hydro bill is like kind of always around this amount. Even like I wasn't in my unit for like 3.5 months this past year. And even then, like my hydro bill was like around $40. So I feel like that's just kind of like the baseline. And I don't quite know why. Like the only thing I can think of that's like plugged in always on is like my fridge, my oven, I guess, and like my clock. I don't understand why it is as high as it is, and why there's so little difference between when I'm actually here versus when I'm not. Like in December, I think I was in my unit for maybe 10 days in December because I went to Mexico for a week and then I was home for the holidays for 10 days. And so yeah, I was gone for like at least 17 days, but I'm sure it was like closer to 20. So why it's just as much as it was in November when I was here every day, I can't tell you. Anyways, my internet is $91.47. I should mention my rent will be increasing in 2025. Not by a lot, there's like a specific amount that they can increase it by, but it is going up by that much. Similarly, my internet will be going up by about $3.50 in 2025 as well. Laundry, very straightforward. I spent $3.50 in October, the same in November, and then $7 in December. My phone bill has stayed the same, $64.41. There are some credits on my bill that I believe will start falling off fairly soon, and at that point in time, I might be looking to switch carriers, just because I got my phone in, I believe it was July 2023, and I think all of the credits that I had might have only been good for 2 years. So that's just something for me to keep in mind. For groceries, I spent $583.48 in October, $412.47 in November, and then $65.89 in December. The reason it's so low in December is because as I said, I wasn't here for a big chunk of December. I was in Mexico at an all expenses paid resort, so I didn't have to buy groceries, and then I was at my parents' and my sister's place for about 10 days, in which I also didn't have to buy groceries. In terms of cafes, I spent $57 in, I'm just gonna say dollar amounts, it's much easier than saying it the full amount. I spent $57 in October, $153 in November, and $96 in December. One thing that I'll mention is the reason the November section is so high is because Starbucks had two buy $25 in gift cards, get $5 free, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And they did that twice, and so I did it twice. So I spent $60 on Starbucks, like on my card. And so I have like a ton of money on my Starbucks card that isn't really typical. Like I don't update my Starbucks card that often, but that explains like a big chunk of that. If you get rid of that, for example, I didn't spend any of my Starbucks card in October or December. So if you get rid of it, it's closer to like $93, which is much closer to the December amount as well. Then restaurants, I spent $54 in October, $270 in November, and $26 in December. The big reason for the significant increase in November is because my boyfriend, or my fiance, came to visit. And so we ate out the vast majority of those days. I sometimes paid. I think one of the dinners that we went to, it was a really nice restaurant, and I think the bill came to like $150, so that's already more than half of that bill. But there were a few other times that I paid as well. For transportation, I spent $27 in October, $39 in November, and $68 in December. These amounts all reflect my balance. So I increased the balance on my transit pass in November. And then in December, because I did 2 trips, I had to make 4 trips to the airport, like there and back, and then there and back again. And so that's the cost of Uber and Lyft for me. Next is entertainment. I spent $177 in October, $46 in November, and $181 in December. The reason I feel like the October and December amounts are quite high. I did spend a fair amount on games, particularly in December, and then I spent a fair amount on movies in both October and December. And that doesn't really bother me. Like I bought a lot of games that I know will keep me quite busy throughout the vast majority of 2025. I do expect that I will purchase some games going forward, but I don't spend nearly $200 a month on games. Clothing, I didn't spend any in October. I spent $118 in November, and I spent $138 in December. I can't remember every single item that I got, but I do know some of this was items that I feel like I really needed. I know for sure, like I got a thermal top. That's just quite nice when it's like freezing cold outside. I went for a walk earlier today and it's like -20. It's very nippy. And so it's just nice to have like warm clothes. So I got a thermal top. I know I got 2 pairs of fleece lined pants. And I believe I got a skirt, sort of like a long flowy skirt. It's gorgeous. And I think I also purchased a shirt/sweater at Lululemon, if I'm not mistaken. And then in terms of makeup, which I feel like I need to call this category something else, like beauty perhaps. I spent $27 in November, nothing in October, $27 in November, $108 in December. The $27 was at Lush. I think I got like 2 body scrubs, 1 face scrub, and I believe there was a 4th thing, but I can't quite recall what it was. I don't use Lush that often, in the sense that I tend to purchase from them about once a year. And then in December, the $108 was for my haircut and my eyebrows, which again, I just don't do that often. For perfume, I spent nothing in October and November, and then $3 in December. That's because I had a coupon for a particular indie store, and that was the balance once I applied the coupon. Then for gifts, I spent $91 in October and $149 in December, I believe. And then for flights, I spent $907 in October, nothing in November, nothing in December, So my flights to Mexico, the $907 was half of the full cost of my flight to Mexico. You'll see under hotel, it's also $907 because it cost $1,815, and I just divided that by 2 to split it evenly between flights and hotel. And then my flight home to visit my family, I had bought that earlier in the year, so it's not reflected in these numbers. And then I didn't buy any flights or hotels in November or December. I didn't spend anything on shipping in October, November, December. I've mentioned before, I sell perfumes that I don't like, or like that I buy and that I end up not enjoying, on various forms, and so I just have it here as a category. I don't think I've sold any perfume in the past few months. Then for medical, I spent $83 in October, and then $109 in November, and nothing in December. I know one of these was a massage. It was surely the $109. I just can't quite recall what the October amount was for. And then wedding. We're planning a wedding. It's going to be very, very small. But at this point in time, I've spent nothing in October and nothing in December and $243 in November. That was the price of my wedding band and my shoots. Then my rental insurance is $15 each month. That's also increasing in 2025, up about $3. For education, I didn't have to spend anything as my tuition was paid in September, so it's not reflected here. Licensing, this refers to my professional engineering license. Again, didn't have to spend anything. I have to do that once a year. I get reimbursed by my company, and I actually have to do that in January or February, just coming up pretty soon. And then other, I had nothing in October, $13 in November, and nothing in December. Again, I know $1 of this was I had to print something at the library, so I had to add like $1 to my account. And then there was $12 for something else that I can't quite remember. I've said before that I tried to keep my other category very limited because I don't want there to be like $500 in other, because if it is, then it means like my categories just aren't, I can't think of the word, like specific enough. There's a better word for it. But sometimes there are just things where it's like, it's a one-off. Like I almost never need to add money to my library card. So it's there just in case. So that means that in October, I spent $41,000, almost $4,200. In November, I spent almost $2,800, and in December, I spent almost $2,200. So these were higher spent months, in large part because I had to pay for my trip to Mexico, which is it's a relatively cheap trip to take, but it's like $2,000 that I don't tend to spend most other months, right? My income, I just take my salary, multiply it by 26 and divide by 12 to get my monthly income. And so you can see that I spend much, much less than half of my income. The other thing is that my income is I take the amount that I actually receive as a paycheck. So what that means is my retirement contributions, all of my insurance contributions, etc., those are already deducted. So I make more than $8,626 a month. It's just with those deductions, that's the amount that I actually see entering my bank account. I didn't have anything that my company needed to reimburse me for, so nothing was reimbursed. So there was a difference of about $16,800 during this quarter, which if you multiply by 4 is about $67,000 a year, which is kind of exciting because that means that I can relatively easily save $67,000 a month when extrapolating from 3 high spend months. And that just makes me feel good because that's almost half of my gross income, not even my net income. Perhaps what will be the most useful is to talk about I don't know if it makes sense to necessarily go through my account one by one at the end of each month. So I'll just say what it was at the end of December. So within my checking account, I had about $6,300, which I primarily use as my emergency savings. In my savings account, I had nothing. In my first home savings account, I had just shy of $20,000. In my tax-free savings account, I had about 152,000. My retirement account, which is one of several retirement accounts that I had about 92,000. In my non-registered account, I had just shy of 500,000. In my savings account, I had about 7,800. My defined contribution pension plan through my employer is just shy of 6,000. My employee stock purchase plan is just shy of 7,000. One of my other retirement accounts is about $235,000. And if you add all of that up, I am just slightly over $1 million net worth, which is really exciting. I know the date that it actually happened is kind of unfortunate because in December, stocks went down like just a bit towards like the latter half of the month. And so I unofficially became a millionaire on November 8th. And that was really exciting. Like that's when my paycheck hit. That's when stocks just started going up a bit in November. And then December was like not a great month. But you can see I have just slightly more money, like $1,000 more than I did in November, even though I got like paid, I had paychecks coming into my account, right? So that's okay. I mean, being a millionaire by the time I'm 32 is awesome, I guess, for lack of a better word. I think I've worked really hard at doing what I do. Like I invest aggressively, and given the way the markets have been over the past couple of years, like I think I read something that the market has increased 50% over the past 2 years, which is like insane to think about. And so like I absolutely have to recognize that it's not just compound interest that can really help you. Obviously having sort of bull runs the way that we have been having over the past few years helps like a lot. If it was just sort of the standard 7% return each year, I would not be at this amount. But all of that to say, I'm glad that I've been investing as heavily as I have been, because I think when there are bull runs like these, like I want to be in on it, right? I want my money in the market when that happens. So with all of that said, I think that's all I really had to talk about in terms of sort of my spending and my expenses. I don't think anything's too crazy here. I think as I said, I think I live like a relatively frugal lifestyle, especially given my salary. Like I don't have a car. I don't currently own a home, though I do intend on buying one in the future. My fiance and I are having a wedding, and it's going to be like very small, even though like we could afford more, but that's just not really what works best for us or what I think either of us really wants. But all of that to say, I'm happy with where I was at the end of December this year, particularly in comparison to the end of December last year. What I'm actually going to do is pull up my budget from 2023. So this is interesting. At the end of 2023, my net worth was about $785,000. So over the course of the year, like, yes, I invested a lot of money. I actually invested over $100,000. It's pretty crazy to think about because although I've been investing pretty heavily, like the amount that I have put in does not make the difference between that and $1 million, right? And so that just shows like when you're in a bull run, the way that the stock market has been, it's really valuable if you're able to ensure that your money is in the market and working for you. And that's really kind of the approach that I want to take. And let it be known that I recognize that, of course, like past performance does not predict future performance. And so I am absolutely prepared for my stocks to come crashing down. I recognize like that's absolutely a possibility. But as it stands, I'm happy with where I'm at. So with that in mind, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of my finances for 2024. I'd love to hear from you. How did your 2024 look like in terms of finances? Are you happy with where you ended up? Are you making some changes for 2025? And if so, what are those changes? I would love to hear what they are. And before you go, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank you for taking time out of your day to spend watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Thank you. Bye.